He thought she was just another client, but one check would reveal a secret that would shatter his assumptions forever. Jasmine walked into the gleaming bank lobby, the late morning sun casting sharp reflections on the polished floors. Dressed simply, a soft blouse and jeans, she looked like any other young woman trying to run an errand. Yet there was a quiet strength in her posture, a calm confidence that drew attention without her even trying. She gripped an envelope in her hand, her heartbeat quickening with every step toward the counter. Inside was a check from her mother, one that represented not just money, but the life she was determined to claim for herself. The bank manager, Mr. Crawford, looked up as she approached. In his 50s, meticulous and notoriously stern, he had a reputation for scrutinizing every client like a detective. Jasmine forced a polite smile. "Good morning, sir. I'd like to deposit this check, please." Mr. Crawford took the envelope, his sharp eyes flicking over the name on it. Jasmine Ellis. I'll need to verify this before I can process it, he said, flipping the envelope over slowly, deliberately. His tone was calm but cold, as if questioning her right to even stand there. Jasmine nodded, expecting routine verification, but then the skepticism in his eyes deepened. "I'm not sure this amount is legitimate," he said, tapping the counter with his fingers. "Do you have authorization or proof from the account holder?" Her chest tightened. "Sir, this check is from my mother. Marlene Ellis. She's the CEO of Ellis Enterprises," Jasmine explained, striving to keep her voice even. At the mention of her mother's name, a flicker of recognition crossed his face, but it vanished immediately. Instead of acknowledgement, his expression darkened. "I don't deal with high-profile clients lightly," he said, and then, with shocking finality, tore the check in half. Jasmine froze. Pieces of the check fluttered down onto the counter like fallen leaves. Her fingers twitched, wanting to grab them, but she held herself back. I can't believe this," she whispered, anger and hurt colliding in her chest. The lobby seemed to close in on her, the soft hum of the air conditioning, the distant murmur of other clients. It all felt unreal, like the world had paused to witness her humiliation. For a moment she questioned herself. Should she walk away, accept the insult silently? Then Jasmine's gaze hardened. She had spent her entire life in the shadow of her mother's success, always proving herself to be more than a name, more than appearances. And now, standing there, she realized the world still judged her before seeing her truth. She took a deep, steadying breath. "Sir," she said, her voice low but unwavering, "I don't think you understand who you're dealing with." Mr. Crawford looked up, surprised, sensing the storm behind her calm words. Jasmine knew this was just the beginning. One moment, one word, could shatter the assumptions he had made, and she was ready to make sure he realized exactly who she was. Jasmine's eyes locked onto Mr. Crawford's, and for a fleeting second, she saw a flicker of doubt in his expression. But it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that familiar condescending smirk. "And who exactly do you think you are, young lady?" He sneered, leaning back slightly, enjoying the power imbalance. Her pulse raced, but she refused to show fear. "I'm someone who doesn't need your permission." "Sir," she replied, her voice steady, "and I don't appreciate being humiliated in front of other people just because of assumptions you've made about me." A few clients glanced up, whispering among themselves. Some stared openly, curiosity piqued, while others pretended not to notice. Jasmine ignored them all. This wasn't about onlookers. It was about dignity, about respect. Mr. Crawford sighed theatrically, glancing at the torn check on the counter. "Look, Ms. Ellis," he began, his tone dripping with mock sympathy. "I understand you come from wealth, but rules are rules. I can't accept this check unless I see proof of the account holder's authorization. That's bank policy." Jasmine's fingers clenched into fists. Every word felt like a slight aimed directly at her, a challenge she wasn't going to back down from. "Sir, you don't seem to understand. My mother isn't just anyone. Marlene Ellis is the CEO of Ellis Enterprises, one of the largest companies in the country. She doesn't write checks you can simply dismiss." At that, Mr. Crawford raised an eyebrow, leaning forward. "I don't care who your mother is," he said. "I care about procedure. I don't take shortcuts for anyone." Jasmine's chest tightened. His arrogance, his blatant ignorance, it was almost unbearable. She could feel the humiliation from the torn check burning in her veins, a mix of shame, anger, and disbelief. She had come here to claim a small piece of independence, and instead, she was being crushed under someone else's narrow-mindedness. Then, almost instinctively, Jasmine lowered her voice, leaning closer to the counter. "You have no idea who you're dealing with," she said, her tone laced with a quiet power. "I don't just carry my mother's name. I carry her legacy, and right now you are about to make the biggest mistake of your life." Mr. Crawford blinked, momentarily thrown off. There was something in her eyes, something that didn't just scream defiance, but authority, a presence that demanded to be reckoned with. Jasmine straightened, letting the words hang in the air. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need theatrics. Her calm, unwavering confidence spoke louder than any voice could. For the first time, Mr. Crawford hesitated. He glanced at the torn check again, then back at her, uncertainty creeping into his rigid demeanor. Jasmine could sense it. The realization that he had underestimated her family, underestimated the power she carried simply by being who she was. Her lips curved into a subtle, almost imperceptible smile. This was only the beginning. Soon he would learn that appearances could be deceiving, and that behind every ordinary-looking person could lie extraordinary power. And Jasmine? She was ready to make him understand that lesson in a way he would never forget. The air in the bank lobby grew heavier, charged with anticipation. A few clients had stopped their business, their heads swiveling toward the confrontation. Whispers rippled through the room. Jasmine felt the weight of their stares, but she refused to let it shake her. Every eye in the room was a reminder of how much courage it took to stand up against someone like Mr. Crawford. He straightened in his chair, clearing his throat in an attempt to regain control. "Ms. Ellis, perhaps you don't understand the seriousness of this situation," he said, his voice rigid. "Rules exist for a reason. You can't just throw money around and expect exceptions." Jasmine's hands rested on the counter, calm and deliberate. "Sir, I'm not throwing anything around. I'm presenting the truth. You've already torn up my check without reason, without respect, and now you're hiding behind rules." Her voice was firm, each word cutting through his facade of authority. The murmurs in the lobby grew louder. Some customers whispered, "Did he just tear her check?" Others shook their heads in disbelief. A few brave ones even exchanged glances with Jasmine, silently rooting for her. It was clear. Everyone could sense she was being wronged. Jasmine leaned a little closer, her eyes locking onto Mr. Crawford's. "You've underestimated me," she said, her voice low but charged with electricity. "And one day soon, people like you will learn that assumptions can be dangerous. You see me as just another client, but I am far more than that." For a moment, Mr. Crawford was silent. He shifted uneasily in his chair, his confident mask starting to crack. His fingers twitched, betraying the tension he was trying desperately to hide. He had dealt with difficult clients before, yes, but never like this. There was an intensity in Jasmine that felt both unfamiliar and threatening. Jasmine's heart raced, but she kept her composure. This was more than a confrontation. It was a test. She had to assert herself without losing control, and every word mattered. "Sir, I will not leave this bank humiliated," she continued, her voice steady. "I will not allow someone else's ignorance to define me. Either you acknowledge this check, or you will have to answer to someone who actually wields the authority you seem incapable of respecting." The words landed like a thunderclap. A few clients gasped audibly, and one whispered, "She's serious. She's not bluffing." Mr. Crawford's eyes widened slightly. For the first time, fear, or perhaps realization, flickered in them. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Jasmine could see it, the subtle shift in power, the awareness that he had miscalculated. Every shred of arrogance he had worn like armor was faltering, and Jasmine knew she had only begun. She would make him understand that she was not just the daughter of a millionaire CEO. She was someone who demanded respect, someone whose presence could not be dismissed or ignored. Slowly, deliberately, she straightened her back, lifted her chin, and let silence fill the lobby. The message was clear, the balance had changed, and the bank manager was about to find out just how costly underestimating her could be. Jasmine took a slow breath, letting the weight of silence press against Mr. Crawford. Every eye in the bank was on them now, the quiet whispers of bystanders amplifying the tension. The manager, usually unshakable, was visibly uneasy. His knuckles whitened around a pen, and his shoulders stiffened. "Ms. Ellis," he said finally, his voice a notch higher, as if trying to reassert control. "I've never seen someone behave this audaciously over a simple check. Are you threatening me?" Jasmine tilted her head slightly, her expression calm yet piercing. "Not threatening," she said slowly, letting each word land deliberately. "Informing," she paused, letting the subtle weight of her next words sink in. "You see, my mother has been in business longer than you've managed this branch. She knows every policy, every regulation, and more importantly, she expects people to act with integrity and respect." Mr. Crawford's face twitched. He swallowed hard, a faint flush creeping up his neck. Jasmine could see the internal struggle, pride battling instinctual fear. He wanted to dismiss her, to cling to the illusion of authority. But something in her presence made it impossible. "I'm telling you this," Jasmine continued, lowering her voice just enough to draw in the nearby ears, "because I value professionalism. And because you've just made a decision that, if escalated, could reflect poorly not just on you, but on the bank itself." A few of the onlookers leaned closer, sensing that this wasn't just a normal dispute. One elderly man muttered under his breath, "She's got him cornered." Mr. Crawford's lips pressed into a thin line. He picked up the torn pieces of the check, inspecting them like evidence in a crime, yet his hand shook ever so slightly. "Do you really think invoking your mother's name intimidates me?" he asked, attempting a casual tone but failing miserably. Jasmine's eyes sparkled with a quiet fire. "I'm not here to intimidate," she said softly, almost a whisper. "I'm here to show you that assumptions have consequences, and that sometimes the person you underestimate is the one who changes everything." A tense pause followed. The lobby felt charged, the faint hum of the air, conditioning now drowned out by the palpable anticipation. Mr. Crawford's gaze darted around nervously, and Jasmine sensed she had him exactly where she wanted. Then, without raising her voice, she added, "If you'd like, I can call my mother right now. She can clarify everything in a matter of minutes." The words hit like a hammer. Mr. Crawford's eyes widened. The sudden possibility of direct contact with Marlene Ellis, the formidable CEO whose reputation preceded her, shook him to the core. Sweat beaded at his temple. He had dealt with wealthy clients before, but he had never faced the daughter of a powerhouse, someone capable of immediately exposing his arrogance. Jasmine's gaze didn't waver. Calm, poised, and undeniably commanding, she let the moment stretch. In that silence, Mr. Crawford realized something crucial. He had underestimated her, and now he was paying the price for it. Jasmine smiled faintly to herself, savoring the shift. In mere minutes, the balance of power had tipped. What had started as a routine bank visit had become a lesson, one that Mr. Crawford would never forget. Mr. Crawford's hand hovered over the phone behind the counter, a sudden hesitation breaking the rigid confidence he had clung to. Jasmine watched, her calm eyes never leaving his. Every second stretched like an eternity, filled with silent pressure. The air in the bank seemed heavier, thick with anticipation. I suppose you could call your mother," he stammered finally, attempting to regain composure, though the tremor in his voice betrayed him. "If she confirms the check, then—" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Jasmine's lips curved into a subtle, knowing smile. "I'm sure she'd be happy to clarify. But before we do that," she said, leaning slightly forward, "I want you to think about what just happened. You tore up a check, humiliated me, and assumed that my name meant nothing. Do you understand what that says about you?" His face flushed. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. I didn't— "No," Jasmine interrupted, her voice firm but controlled. "You did. And that's the point. You acted arrogantly without consideration. You let your assumptions dictate your behavior. And assumptions like that," she tapped the torn check gently on the counter, "can be very costly." Around them, whispers grew louder. A few clients glanced at their phones, trying to hide smirks or amazement. The elderly man from earlier leaned forward, murmuring, "She's schooling him without raising her voice. Incredible." Mr. Crawford's knuckles whitened as he gripped the counter. He glanced at the torn check again, then back at Jasmine, his usual arrogance crumbling under the weight of reality. For the first time, he saw her not as just a young woman, but as someone carrying the power to undo him entirely, socially, professionally, even financially. Jasmine straightened, her posture regal. "You have a choice, Mr. Crawford," she said slowly, letting the words hang like a challenge. "You can admit your mistake and handle this professionally, or you can continue clinging to your pride and face consequences that could reach far beyond this lobby." A bead of sweat slid down his temple. The usually unshakable bank manager felt something unfamiliar. Fear. The sharp, sinking realization that he had overstepped. He glanced nervously at the lobby, where everyone was now silently observing, waiting to see what would happen next. Finally, with a deep, reluctant sigh, he picked up the phone. Jasmine allowed herself a quiet, victorious breath, knowing that the next words could change everything. "Hello. Yes, I need to speak with Marlene Ellis's office," he stammered. Yes, it's urgent." Jasmine watched him struggle, the power dynamic now unmistakably hers. In that moment, she realized how often she had underestimated her own presence in the world. Today she hadn't just defended a check, she had asserted herself in a world that often dismissed young women like her, especially black women, with little thought. And in a few moments, the full weight of her mother's influence would arrive, silently, authoritatively and irrevocably. The phone crackled in Mr. Crawford's trembling hand. Jasmine's eyes never left him. Every second stretched, the entire bank holding its breath. He dialed a number hesitantly, muttering under his breath as if the sheer act of calling Marlene Ellis personally terrified him. "Ms. Ellis, I'm calling from your bank," he stammered, finally reaching the other line. His voice faltered. "Yes. There's been an issue with a check." Jasmine's lips curved into a quiet, controlled smile. She could feel the subtle shift in the room, the tension, the curious eyes, the barely contained whispers. Everyone could sense that something monumental was about to unfold. Then, in a crisp, commanding voice over the phone, a woman spoke. "Mr. Crawford, I believe you are speaking to Marlene Ellis, is that correct?" Time seemed to freeze. The bank manager froze mid-step, his color draining from his face. "Yes, Ms. Ellis, I didn't..." His words failed him entirely. Jasmine leaned against the counter, her posture relaxed, but her heart raced. She had rehearsed this confrontation in her mind, but nothing compared to the real-time thrill of witnessing her mother's authority crack through. Mr. Crawford's arrogance like a lightning strike. "You tore up my daughter's check?" Marlene's voice was calm but deadly, carrying the weight of someone who commanded respect without raising it. "Explain to me why a routine transaction has escalated to this level." The usually unflappable Mr. Crawford swallowed hard. I thought, I didn't realize." "You thought wrong," Marlene interrupted sharply. "Do you understand what happens when you assume and humiliate someone based on appearances?" Jasmine felt a rush of vindication. Her mother's presence, even through a phone call, radiated power, the kind of power that demanded accountability, that could topple egos instantly. "Yes, ma'am, he began, but Marlene's piercing tone silenced him immediately. "I will have your superiors review your conduct," she continued, "and you will ensure that the check is honored immediately, without further delay or humiliation." Yes, ma'am," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The shift was complete. The arrogance, the superiority, the smugness, all gone, replaced by fear and compliance. Jasmine allowed herself a small, victorious smile. The room seemed lighter, as if the tension had been lifted by an unseen hand. The onlookers whispered among themselves, some nodding in awe at the young woman who had orchestrated such a swift and undeniable reversal of fortune. She looked at Mr. Crawford, who now sat stiffly, defeated. "Remember this moment," she said softly yet pointedly, "because assumptions like yours don't just embarrass, you'll live with them in your conscience." The phone clicked as Marlene ended the call, and silence settled over the bank. Jasmine straightened fully, exhaling slowly. She had come to deposit a simple check, but she had walked out asserting not only her dignity, but her mother's authority in a way that would be remembered by everyone in the room. And as she gathered the pieces of her torn check, now redeemed and restored through her mother's intervention, she realized something profound. Power wasn't just about money, influence, or titles. It was about presence, courage, and the ability to stand unapologetically for yourself. For Jasmine, that moment would forever mark the line between being underestimated and being recognized for who she truly was. The silence in the bank lobby was almost deafening. Clients who had been quietly observing the drama now exchanged stunned glances. Some whispered, others shook their heads in disbelief, and a few even smiled in quiet admiration at Jasmine. She had not just stood her ground. She had commanded authority, dignity, and respect, all in a matter of minutes. Mr. Crawford sat behind the counter, rigid and pale. His usual air of superiority had vanished completely. The torn check lay before him, now restored and ready to be deposited, yet it no longer mattered as a piece of paper. It had become a symbol of assumptions shattered, and of Jasmine's unwavering strength. Jasmine straightened fully, feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and triumph. She had anticipated resistance, perhaps even humiliation, but she had never imagined just how deeply her own presence could assert power when combined with truth, courage, and the legacy of her mother. One of the younger clients whispered to his companion, "Did you see that? She didn't yell, she didn't threaten, and yet he folded instantly." The murmurs spread like wildfire, a quiet chorus of acknowledgement for the young woman who had turned the tables effortlessly. Jasmine approached the counter slowly, her hands steady. "Thank you," she said simply to the teller beside her who had been quietly observing the confrontation, offering small nods of support. The teller smiled back, relief evident in her eyes. Then, Jasmine turned to Mr. Crawford. There was no anger left in her voice, only calm authority. "I hope this serves as a lesson," she said softly. Yet every word carried weight. Assumptions can destroy reputations. They can humiliate people, and they can backfire in ways you never expect. He nodded, still pale, unable to meet her gaze. Yes, ma'am, I understand." His words were hollow, but they carried the sting of defeat. Jasmine didn't linger on it. She had made her point. As she stepped away from the counter, she felt a rush of emotions, relief, vindication, and an unexpected pride. All her life, she had watched her mother wield influence and power with precision and calm. Today, she had glimpsed that power herself, not just through her mother, but through her own courage and poise. Outside the bank, sunlight spilled across the street, warm and inviting. Jasmine walked out slowly, letting the cool breeze wash over her. The world outside seemed unchanged, yet she knew something inside her had shifted forever. She had not only defended herself, she had demanded recognition, and in doing so, had discovered the depth of her own strength. A car passed by. A man nodded approvingly at her, and somewhere nearby, laughter and chatter resumed in the normal rhythm of life. But for Jasmine, the moment lingered, etched deeply into her memory as a turning point. A day when respect was claimed, assumptions were shattered, and a young woman's dignity prevailed against arrogance and ignorance. And somewhere in the distance, Jasmine knew that her mother would hear of this encounter and smile, proud of the daughter who had inherited not just her name, but her unshakable resolve. Later that afternoon, Jasmine sat in a quiet cafe, sipping her coffee and letting the events of the morning settle. The sunlight streamed through the windows, highlighting the subtle triumph etched across her face. She replayed every moment in her mind, the torn check, the manager's arrogance, the way the entire lobby had shifted in the space of minutes. Her phone buzzed, and she saw her mother's name light up the screen. Jasmine felt a warm surge of connection, a mix of pride and relief. She answered, her voice calm but carrying a hint of excitement. "Hello, Mom," she said. "Jasmine?" Marlene's voice came, crisp and commanding, yet tinged with warmth. "I just spoke to the branch. Everything's fine, I trust." Jasmine smiled softly. "Yes, Mom, it's done. The check. Everything's resolved. Let's just say he learned his lesson." Marlene chuckled lightly, a sound that was both powerful and tender. "I'm proud of you, Jasmine, not just for handling the bank manager, but for standing firm in who you are. Remember, true strength isn't in authority alone, it's in knowing your worth and asserting it without hesitation." Jasmine felt a lump in her throat. For years she had watched her mother navigate boardrooms and negotiations, with effortless command, always precise, always calculated, and now she had experienced a glimpse of that power herself. She realized it wasn't something inherited by blood alone, it was something cultivated, a combination of courage, poise, and unwavering self-respect. "I guess I finally understand, Mom," Jasmine admitted softly. "It's not just about having a name or a legacy. It's about showing up fully and refusing to be dismissed, even when the world assumes it can ignore you." "That's right, my dear," Marlene replied, pride evident in her tone. "And today, you did more than I could have hoped. You didn't just claim respect, you earned it. People will remember that." Jasmine leaned back in her chair, letting the warmth of the cafe and the sunlight soothe her. She realized that independence wasn't about escaping her mother's shadow. It was about stepping into her own power while acknowledging where she had come from. The morning's humiliation had transformed into a moment of clarity. And now, every glance at the torn and restored check would remind her of her strength. For Jasmine, the experience had been more than a confrontation. It was a lesson in courage, dignity, and the subtle ways authority could be claimed without force. She had seen her own potential reflected back at her, and she knew that moving forward, she would carry it with confidence. And as she ended the call with her mother, Jasmine smiled, feeling a deep, unshakable sense of empowerment. Today, assumptions had been shattered, lessons had been delivered, and a young woman had claimed her rightful place in a world that had briefly tried to overlook her. By the time Jasmine stepped back onto the sunlit sidewalk outside the bank, the tension of the morning felt like a distant memory. Yet the echoes of what had transpired lingered in her mind. The shredded check, Mr. Crawford's shock, the hushed whispers of the onlookers. Every step she took was lighter, more assured. as if the world itself had shifted slightly in her favor. Inside the bank, staff and customers exchanged quiet conversations. Some remarked on the courage Jasmine had displayed. Others marveled at the sudden reversal of power. The teller, who had witnessed the confrontation, leaned over to a colleague, whispering, "I've never seen someone handle a situation like that without yelling or demanding anything." She commanded respect just by being herself. Jasmine paused at the curb, observing a few pedestrians glance her way, their expressions subtly impressed. It struck her how often people judged appearances and how easily assumptions could blind even seasoned professionals. Today had proven that true strength was visible not in loud words or flashy gestures, but in calm authority paired with unwavering self-belief. Her mind wandered briefly to Mr. Crawford. She wondered if he had reflected on his behavior yet, if the humiliation and the phone call from her mother would leave a lasting impression. She doubted he would forget, and that realization made her smile faintly. She hadn't sought revenge. She had sought recognition, dignity, and justice, and that had been achieved without losing herself. As Jasmine walked down the street, the envelope containing the restored check pressed gently against her side. She felt a surge of pride, not just for the victory itself, but for the clarity it had brought. She had faced arrogance, prejudice, and dismissal head-on, and she had emerged stronger, more aware of her own power, and more connected to her mother's wisdom than ever before. A young woman sitting nearby with her laptop looked up as Jasmine passed, curiosity and admiration in her eyes. Jasmine returned a quiet nod, a subtle acknowledgement of the unspoken connection between women who navigated a world that often underestimated them. By the time she reached her car, Jasmine had made a silent promise to herself. She would carry this strength into every corner of her life. The morning's ordeal had not only taught her the consequences of assumptions, but also revealed the quiet, undeniable force that came from confidence, courage, and self-respect. And though the story of the torn check and the bank manager would fade from the lobby and into mere whispers for Jasmine, it had become something far more profound, a defining moment, a turning point, and a reminder that she was never, ever someone to be underestimated. That evening, Jasmine sat by her apartment window, watching the city lights flicker like stars scattered across the streets below. The day's events replayed vividly in her mind. The confrontation at the bank, the manager's arrogance, the torn check, and her mother's commanding presence over the phone. She felt a sense of calm satisfaction, tempered with gratitude for the lessons she had learned. Her phone buzzed once more, a message from her mother lighting up the screen. "I'm proud of you, Jasmine. Today you didn't just protect a check, you demonstrated who you are. Never let anyone forget it." Jasmine smiled softly, her heart swelling. The message wasn't just about the morning's victory, it was about recognition, understanding, and a bond that transcended wealth and titles. Her mother had always been a symbol of power and resilience, but today, Jasmine had felt that power within herself, standing tall in her own right. The torn check, now safely tucked in her purse, had become more than a piece of paper. It was a reminder of courage in the face of arrogance, of dignity reclaimed, and of the unshakable truth that assumptions could never define her worth. She reflected on the bank lobby, the whispered awe, the subtle nods of respect from strangers, and even Mr. Crawford's humbled silence. Each moment had carved a lasting impression on her sense of self. Jasmine leaned back, exhaling slowly, letting the city's hum fill her ears. She realized something profound. Independence wasn't measured by distance from her mother or wealth. It was measured by the ability to stand unapologetically, to assert herself, and to claim respect in a world eager to overlook her. A soft breeze drifted through the open window, carrying with it the scents of the evening city. Jasmine closed her eyes, feeling grounded, powerful, and deeply connected to the woman she had always admired, her mother, and to the woman she was becoming. Today had been a battle of assumptions, a test of poise and a moment of undeniable triumph, and she had passed with grace, strength, and clarity. For Jasmine, the lesson was now etched in her heart. Power was not about intimidation, money, or appearances. It was about presence, courage, and the unyielding confidence to claim your rightful place. She smiled, knowing that the world had glimpsed only a fraction of who she truly was. And that was enough. As night fell and the city lights shimmered, Jasmine felt a deep sense of victory, not just over the bank manager, but over every assumption, every doubt, and every moment in life that had tried to diminish her. She had emerged not just victorious, but transformed, ready to face the world on her own terms, with the unshakable knowledge that her worth was undeniable. And in that quiet, luminous moment, Jasmine understood something she would carry forever. The strength to stand tall came not from anyone else, but from within.